The room was supposed to stay quiet. That was the deal. You wear the tuxedo, you eat the salmon, you laugh at the safe jokes, and you go home pretending everything is fine. That is how the White House Correspondents' Dinner has worked for decades. A carefully rehearsed performance of normalcy. A ritual designed to make you believe that power and the press still have a healthy, functioning relationship. But something broke that ritual last night, and the moment it broke, you could feel it. That specific kind of silence that only happens when comedy stops being safe and starts being true. If you have ever been in a room where someone finally said the thing nobody was allowed to say, you know exactly what that silence feels like. That is what happened. And if you want to understand what it actually means, stay with me, because what I am about to show you goes much deeper than a few uncomfortable jokes at a dinner party. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. When was the last time you watched a political event and felt like you were seeing the real version? Not the managed version, not the spun version, the actual raw truth underneath. Because that is what this dinner is actually built for. Not for celebrities, not for networking, not for journalists to congratulate themselves on being important. Underneath the chandeliers and the open bar, this dinner is a negotiation. It has always been a negotiation. The press and the presidency sitting across a table from each other, figuring out the terms of their relationship for the next year. And the jokes, the brutal jabs everyone keeps clipping and reposting, those are not the entertainment portion of the evening. That is the actual negotiation happening in real time in front of cameras. And once you understand that, once you see this dinner for what it truly is, you can never watch it the same way again. Share this with someone who thinks they already know what the Correspondents' Dinner is, because I promise you, almost nobody does. Here is what most people missed last night. They went straight to the reactions. Who looked uncomfortable? Who had the best facial expression? Who laughed? Who did not? And in doing that, they skipped the most important thing entirely, what was actually being said and who it was deliberately aimed at. Because here is what you need to understand about political comedy at this level. Nothing is accidental. Every single word at that microphone has been thought through. Every target has been chosen deliberately. Every punchline has been engineered to land in the most precise, most uncomfortable way possible. The person holding that microphone is not telling jokes. They are making a series of calculated decisions about what the truth is and who needs to hear it, and exactly how to deliver it so that it cannot be dismissed or deflected or laughed away. And when you watch it through that lens, what happened last night becomes something completely different. It stops being a funny clip and starts being one of the most revealing political moments of the year. Stay with me, because the part most people have not talked about yet is coming, and it is the part that actually matters. The jokes were not only aimed at politicians. That is the part that got buried under all the clipping and the reaction videos and the hot takes. The sharpest, most uncomfortable moments last night were aimed directly at the journalists sitting in that room, at the press corps itself, at the media organizations that employ them, at the business model that has quietly forced those organizations to make decisions they are not proud of. And when that microphone turned on the press, when the comedy stopped targeting politicians and started targeting journalism itself, the room went genuinely quiet. Not polite quiet, not pause for laughter quiet, the kind of quiet that only happens when a truth lands that everyone in the room already knew, but had agreed without ever saying so not to talk about. Because the journalists in that room know. They know the industry is broken. They know that the advertising model collapsed and took the economic foundation of serious reporting with it. They know that clicks now matter more than they should. They know that certain stories get covered not because they are the most important stories, but because they are the stories that drive the most engagement, the most outrage, the most traffic. They know all of this. They live inside it every single day, and they almost never talk about it publicly. Because how do you talk about it publicly when your career exists inside the very system you would be criticizing? So they carry it quietly. And then someone stands at a microphone at the most watched dinner in Washington and says it out loud. And the room goes quiet. And the salmon suddenly becomes very interesting. That silence, that specific silence, tells you more about the state of American media right now than any panel discussion or journalism conference ever could. And if you are finding this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe because we are doing this kind of deep analysis daily, and this conversation is only getting started. Now I want to talk about the laughter. Because there was laughter too, and the laughter is just as revealing as the silence, maybe more so. There were moments last night when someone took a direct, devastating hit. A joke clearly aimed at something real, something personal, something they could not easily dismiss. And instead of going stone-faced or looking away, they laughed. And here's the question that nobody is asking this morning. Was that laughter real? Because it might have been. But it also might have been the most calculated move in the room. Because in a room full of journalists with cameras on every face, not laughing is not an option. Not laughing says, "This got to me." Not laughing says, "There is something here I cannot face." And laughing says the opposite. Laughing says, "I am confident enough to hear this, secure enough to absorb this, unbothered enough to find this funny." So some of the laughter you saw last night was genuine, and some of it was performance. And the fascinating, unresolvable question, the one that makes this dinner so extraordinary to watch if you are paying attention to the right things, is which laughter was which? Who was actually okay? And who was performing okay because the alternative was too revealing? Learning to tell the difference is not just an entertainment skill, it is a way of reading power. And if you are not already reading power this way every day, you are missing what is actually happening in this country. Let me connect this to something bigger. Because the dinner does not exist in a vacuum. It exists inside a specific political and media environment where the official story and the real story have rarely been further apart, where language is being used very deliberately, very skillfully, not to describe reality, but to replace it, to take what actually happened and reframe it as something beautiful, something tremendous, something to be proud of. That is a specific rhetorical move, the move of someone who understands at a very deep level that controlling the story is almost the same as controlling reality. Because if enough people accept the story, if the story becomes the version they hold in their heads, then the gap between the story and the reality can grow almost without limit. And what the Correspondents' Dinner does, what the brutal comedy does, is compete with that story. It offers a different version. It says, wait, before you accept that version, look at this. Just look. The comedy does not argue. It does not present counter-evidence or alternative data. It just points. And sometimes pointing is the most powerful thing you can do. Which brings me to the question I keep coming back to. Does any of this actually matter? Do the moments of honesty that get wrapped in comedy and laughed at in a ballroom and clipped and posted and viewed by millions, do those moments actually change anything? Does the journalist who recognized themselves in a brutal joke about media incentives make a different decision the next morning? Does the person in power who sat through 30 seconds of public discomfort leave that room thinking differently about anything? I want to believe the answer is yes. I want to believe that moments of public honesty accumulate, that they build permission structures, that they make it slightly easier to say the true thing the next time. But I also understand the cynical reading, the reading that says these dinners exist precisely as pressure release valves, that you say the thing, you laugh about the thing, and then you go back to doing the thing exactly the way you were doing it before. Nothing disrupted, nothing changed. I do not think it is that simple, because what I saw in those clips, what I felt reading through the room reactions, what came through even in the most carefully edited footage, was something that felt like genuine clarity. A moment where a room full of powerful, media-savvy, strategically sophisticated people collectively stopped performing, even briefly, and recognized something true together. And those moments are rare. They are not nothing. They are the moments where the gap between the official version and the real version becomes visible. Not fixed, not closed, but visible. And visibility is where change begins. What happened at that dinner last night was not just entertainment. It was a signal, a mirror held up to the most powerful room in American media. And the reflection was uncomfortable, because reflections of broken things usually are. The jokes were brutal, because reality is sometimes brutal. And when you point at it directly, without softening it or managing it or wrapping it in diplomatic language, it lands the way all avoided truths eventually land, hard and undeniable. That shared moment of silence in that room, the moment when everyone knew that something true had just been said, that was the real show. Not the punchlines, not the reactions, the silence underneath. And the fact that the truth needed to be dressed as comedy to get through the door of that room, that tells you everything you need to know about where we are right now. We are breaking down moments like this daily because the gap between the story we are being told and the story that is actually happening is not shrinking. If this gave you a new way of seeing what is going on, drop a comment telling me what surprised you most. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Not because we're asking, but because this is the conversation you have been looking for, and we are not stopping anytime soon.